The massive Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the usual sounds of diplomatic chatter. Representatives from dozens of species filled the floating platforms that circled the central meeting space. The crystalline Vorthok clinked softly as they moved, their bodies catching the artificial light. The gaseous nebulans floated in their containment suits, speaking in whistling tones. The insectoid creche clicked their mandibles in what passed for conversation among their kind. Admiral Veltar of the Kristen fleet was reviewing trade reports when his communication device suddenly screamed an emergency alert. The sound was so loud and urgent that every being in the chamber turned to look at him. His blue crystalline face darkened as he read the message flashing on his screen. "Unknown vessel detected at system edge," he announced, his voice carrying easily across the chamber. "Size unknown, design unknown, energy signature." He paused, reading the numbers again. "Energy signature exceeds our measurement capabilities." Ambassador Thexul of the hegemony laughed with all four of his throats, creating a harsh grating sound. "Another primitive species, thinking they can impress us with their little ships. Remember the Deltans? They thought their metal boxes were impressive too." But Veltar was not laughing. His people had the most advanced sensors in the galaxy, and those sensors were telling him something impossible. The ship that had just appeared was not like anything in their vast databases. It was angular where most ships were curved. It showed signs of battle damage, but the damage looked old, worn, like scars on a veteran warrior. Most disturbing of all, the energy coming from the ship made their best equipment struggle to function properly. "Sir," his aide whispered, "we're receiving a transmission." The chamber fell quiet as Veltar activated the communication system. Static filled the air, followed by sounds that made no sense to any of them. The universal translators worked frantically, trying to make sense of the alien language. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the translation came through. "This is Captain Kim Ji-ho of the UES Retribution. We have come to collect our people." The words hung in the air like a threat. Every representative in the chamber knew exactly what the voice was talking about. 3 galactic cycles ago, they had encountered a primitive species calling themselves humans. The humans had been traveling in a slow, clunky ship with no weapons and no shields. The hegemony had captured them easily, selling the strange bipedal creatures across 12 different star systems as exotic slaves and curiosities. "Humans," whispered Representative Crix of the Traders Guild. "But that's impossible. They had no faster-than-light travel. They had no energy weapons. They were barely more advanced than animals." Ambassador Vexel stood up on his platform, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture of dismissal. "This is clearly some kind of mistake. The humans we captured were primitives. They had no technology worth mentioning. They certainly didn't have ships capable of crossing galactic distances." But even as he spoke, more data was flowing into the chamber. The ship that called itself the Retribution was not just large, it was enormous. It dwarfed even the biggest hegemony battleships. Its hull was made of materials that their scanners could not identify. The energy readings suggested weapons. Systems that operated on principles unknown to galactic science. "Perhaps," suggested Veltar carefully, "we should attempt communication. Find out what they want exactly." "We know what they want," snapped Thexul. "They want their people back. But that's not how the galaxy works. We found them first. We claimed them according to established salvage laws. They belong to us now." The human voice came through the speakers again, clearer this time as the translators adjusted to the new language. "We are requesting immediate return of all human personnel taken from the vessel US New Horizon. We have tracked their locations across your territories. We know where they are." A chill ran through the chamber. How could these primitives have tracked anything across galactic space? How could they know the locations of slaves sold 3 years ago? "This is preposterous," declared Dexel. "One ship against the combined fleets of the galaxy. Even if they somehow developed new technology, They cannot threaten us. We have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, entire worlds under our control. But Veltar was studying the readings more carefully. The ship was not broadcasting any identification codes. It was not following standard approach protocols. It was not even trying to communicate through proper diplomatic channels. Instead, it simply sat at the edge of the system like a predator, watching its prey. "Sir," his aide whispered urgently, "the ship is moving." On the main display screen, they watched as the Retribution began to glide through space with impossible grace for something so massive. It moved without visible engines, without energy trails, without any of the normal signs of propulsion. It simply moved, as if space itself was bending around it. "Magnificent," breathed Representative Crix. What kind of technology could the transmission cut off suddenly? Every screen in the chamber went dark for a moment, then flickered back to life, showing the same image, a human face. The being looked older than the humans they had captured, with lines around dark eyes and gray streaks in black hair. But those eyes held something that made every representative in the chamber instinctively step back from their communication screens. "You have something that belongs to us," Kim Ji-ho said simply. "We want it back." The council chamber filled with nervous energy as Captain Kim Ji-ho's image remained on every screen. His dark eyes moved slowly across the assembled representatives, as if he could see each of them individually through the transmission. The silence stretched uncomfortably long before Ambassador Vexel finally found his voice. "Captain," Dexel began, his four throats working to create what he hoped was a diplomatic tone, "surely we can discuss this matter like civilized beings. The galaxy operates on established laws of salvage and acquisition. Your people were found aboard a disabled vessel in neutral space. According to our treaties, ... Kim's expression did not change. He simply waited, letting Vexel's words fill the empty air between them. When the ambassador finally stopped talking, Kim spoke in the same calm voice as before. "Where are they?" "Well, that is a complex question," Vexel stammered. "They have been distributed across multiple systems according to market demands and specialized requirements. Some are working in the mining colonies of Kepler 7. Others have been sent to agricultural worlds, where their physical capabilities ... Where are they?" Kim repeated, his voice exactly the same tone and volume as before. Representative Crix leaned forward on her platform. "Captain, perhaps we can reach some kind of arrangement. The Traders Guild would be happy to negotiate a fair price for the return of your people. We could offer technology exchanges, mineral rights, even territorial concessions in the Outer Rim systems." For the first time, something that might have been amusement flickered across Kim's face. "You want to sell them back to us?" "It is the standard practice," Veltar interjected quickly. "When disputed property crosses multiple jurisdictions, the normal resolution is financial compensation. We could arrange very reasonable terms." "Property," Kim said, and now there was definitely something new in his voice, something cold and dangerous. "You call them property?" The chamber erupted in a dozen different languages as representatives tried to explain galactic law to the human captain. They spoke of salvage rights and economic zones. They mentioned precedent, cases and established procedures. They offered credits and raw materials and exclusive trading agreements. Kim waded through all of it. He sat perfectly still while chaos swirled around him, his image crystal clear on every screen in the chamber. When the noise finally died down, he stood up slowly. "You misunderstand our purpose here," he said, his voice carrying easily over the remaining whispers. "We are not here to negotiate. We are not here to buy our people back. We are not here to follow your laws or respect your treaties." He paused, and the chamber held its collective breath. "We are here to take our people home, all of them, from every world where you have sent them, from every mine and farm and laboratory where you have put them to work. We will find them, and we will bring them back. Vexel S4 arms waved dismissively. Captain, I think you failed to understand the reality of your situation. You have one ship. One. The hegemony alone commands over 3,000 vessels. The combined fleets of the galaxy number in the tens of thousands. Your threats are meaningless. Are they? Kim asked. Something in his tone made Veltar check his sensor readings again. The Retribution had moved closer to the system's inner planets while they had been talking. Much closer. How had something that large moved so far without any of their instruments detecting the motion? Captain Veltar said carefully, "Perhaps we should arrange a formal meeting. Face-to-face discussions often resolve these sorts of misunderstandings more effectively than long-range communications." Kim nodded slowly. "That might be helpful. Would you like to meet aboard your ship, or mine?" "Oh, we could arrange neutral ground," Dexel said quickly. "The diplomatic station at your ship, or mine," Kim repeated. The representatives looked at each other uncertainly. Meeting aboard an unknown alien vessel went against every safety protocol in the diplomatic handbook, but suggesting the human captain come aboard one of their ships somehow felt even more dangerous. "Perhaps your vessel would be appropriate," Veltar said finally. "Good. Send your fastest ship to these coordinates." Numbers appeared on every screen in the chamber. "Come alone. Bring authority to make decisions about the humans in your territories." "Now, wait just a moment," Dexel protested. "We need time to prepare proper diplomatic credentials, to arrange security protocols, to... The transmission cut off abruptly. Every screen in the chamber went dark, then flickered back to life, showing the normal system display. The Retribution was still there, hanging in space like a dark metal moon, but Captain Kim was no longer speaking to them. "Arrogant, primitive," Vexel muttered. "He thinks he can give orders to the Galactic Council." But Veltar was studying his readings with growing alarm. "Sir," he called to his aide, "confirm the sensor data on the Hegemony flagship Dominator." There was a pause as the aide worked frantically at his controls. "Sir, I'm showing normal readings for all Hegemony vessels in the system." "Check again," Veltar ordered. "Focus specifically on Ambassador Vexel's personal flagship." Another pause. Longer this time. "Sir, I'm not detecting the Dominator anywhere in the system." The chamber fell dead silent. Vexel turned to stare at Veltar, his four faces showing confusion and growing fear. "That's impossible," he whispered. "My ship was right here. It was... He never finished the sentence. Every being in the chamber understood what had happened, though none of them could explain how. The human captain had just made his point without firing a shot. The rescue began 3 days after Ambassador Vexel's flagship vanished without a trace. Lieutenant Commander Park Mina stood in the transport bay of the Retribution, checking her equipment one final time. Around her, 20 other Marines did the same, their faces calm, but their eyes hard with purpose. "Remember," she said quietly, "we're not here to start a war. We're here to bring our people home. Anyone who tries to stop us made that choice themselves." The mining facility on Kepler 7 had been their first target for good reason. Intelligence reports showed it held the largest group of humans in a single location, 43 people who had been working in the deep tunnels for almost 3 years. The facility was run by a Kresh corporation that specialized in using slave labor for dangerous jobs. Park's team materialized on the surface of Kepler 7, using technology that the galaxy had never seen before. No transport ships, no landing craft, no energy signatures that their sensors could detect. One moment the rocky surface was empty. The next moment, 21 human soldiers stood ready for action. The Kresh guards at the main entrance barely had time to register what they were seeing. Park moved through them like water flowing around stones, her weapon making soft wisping sounds that somehow dropped the insectoid beings without any visible damage. Behind her, Sergeant Lee Junho and his squad secured the control room, while the rest of the team moved deeper into the facility. "Humans," Park called out in the common galactic language as they reached the first holding area. "We are here to take you home." The response was immediate. Voices called out from behind heavy metal doors, speaking in Korean and English and a dozen other Earth languages. Park felt her chest tighten as she heard how weak some of those voices sounded. 3 years of hard labor in dangerous conditions had taken their toll. Lee's voice came through her communicator. "Command center secured. I've got the facility records pulled up. Our people are spread across 6 different work levels. Some of them, ... double quotes, his voice paused. Some of them are in the medical wing." Park closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them with renewed determination. "Free them all. Every single one." The operation took exactly 47 minutes. By the time the crushed security forces realized what was happening, the humans were already gone, transported back to the Retribution by the same mysterious method that had brought the Marines to the surface. Left behind were empty cells, confused guards, and a message burned into the metal wall of the main corridor. "These people were not property. Anyone who treats them as such will answer to us." News of the Kepler-7 rescue spread through underground communication networks faster than official reports could suppress it. Within hours, similar operations were reported across 5 different star systems. The pattern was always the same. Human soldiers appeared without warning, freed their people, and vanished again, leaving behind destruction and terror among the guards and overseers. Commander Choyuna led the rescue at the agricultural world of New Eden, where 38 humans had been forced to work the vast grain fields under the harsh light of twin suns. She found them in barracks that were little more than metal boxers, sleeping on floors, eating food that barely qualified as nutrition. "You're safe now," she told them, as her team systematically destroyed every piece of equipment used to control and monitor the human workers. "You're going home." An old man with scars covering his arms looked up at her with tears in his eyes. We thought you would never find us. We thought Earth had forgotten about us." "Earth never forgot," Choi said firmly. "And neither did we." The rescue operations continued for weeks. Major Kong Soo-jin hit 3 different locations in a single day, her teams somehow appearing simultaneously on worlds that were light years apart. The galaxy's military forces tried desperately to track the human ships, but their sensors found nothing. The Retribution would appear in one system long enough to complete a rescue, then vanish completely before any response could be organized. The rescued humans told stories that spread through every space station and trading post in the galaxy. They spoke of how the Korean captain had personally visited some of them in holding cells, speaking softly in their native languages, promising that rescue was coming. They described how the human soldiers fought with precision and purpose, never harming anyone who didn't threaten them, but showing no mercy to those who did. On Vega Station A, rescued human named David Chen spoke to a gathering of freed slaves from many different species. "They came for us," he said, his voice carrying across the crowded room. "Even though we were scattered across dozens of worlds, even though it meant fighting the entire galaxy, they came for us because we are family." The galactic powers tried to respond, but coordination proved impossible. The Kristen fleet rushed to protect their mining operations, only to find them already hit. The hegemony marshaled defensive forces around their most valuable facilities, but the humans seemed to know exactly where to strike for maximum effect. Admiral Veltar studied the tactical reports with growing unease. "They're not just rescuing their people," he told his staff. "They're sending a message. Every operation is designed to cause maximum psychological impact with minimum actual destruction. They want us to be afraid." "Are they succeeding?" asked his aide. Veltar looked at the latest intelligence reports. 7 more facilities hit in the past day. 1,200 human slaves freed. 0 human casualties. Enemy casualties only among those who directly resisted. "Yes," he said quietly. "They are succeeding." Fear spread through the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. In the crystal cities of Vorthok Prime, citizens sealed their homes and refused to venture into space. On the gas platforms of Nebula Station, workers whispered stories of human soldiers who could appear from nowhere and vanish like ghosts. Even the mighty Kresh Empire began pulling their fleets back to protect their homeworlds. Admiral Veltar stood in the command center of the Kristen flagship Eternal Light, watching the tactical display with growing horror. Red markers showed every location where humans had struck. The pattern was spreading like a disease across the star maps, each new rescue operation bringing the human threat closer to the core worlds. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving emergency requests for protection from 17 different systems. They're offering to pay triple the standard contract rates, and we can't help any of them," Veltar replied grimly. "Every time we move ships to intercept, the humans hit somewhere completely different. It's like they know our plans before we make them." The truth was even worse than he suspected. Captain Kim Ji-ho stood on the bridge of the Retribution, studying intelligence reports that seemed impossible. His people had somehow tapped into the galaxy's most secure communication networks. They knew where every fleet was moving, where every defensive position was being established, where every meeting was being held to discuss the human threat. "Sir," reported Commander Han Nari from her station, "the hegemony is attempting to unite the major powers. They've called for an emergency session of the War Council." Kim nodded without looking up from his reports. "How many of our people are still missing?" 47 confirmed locations. Approximately 200 individuals still in captivity. Then we continue. The War Council meeting took place on the neutral station at Sigma Point, far from any populated system. Representatives from 12 major powers gathered in the heavily shielded conference room, their faces showing the strain of weeks of constant fear. Ambassador Thexul, now commanding from a new flagship, after his previous one had mysteriously vanished, stood at the head of the table. "We must act together," he declared, his forearms gesturing dramatically. "These humans have violated every law of civilized warfare. They strike without warning, ignore diplomatic immunity, and refuse to negotiate in good faith. Perhaps," suggested Representative Crix carefully, "we should consider their demands, return their people, and end this conflict before it escalates further." The chamber erupted in angry voices. "Give in to terrorists," shouted Admiral Krex of the Insectoid Defense Force. "Set a precedent that any primitive species can threaten the established order." "They're hardly primitive now," Veltar pointed out. "Our best intelligence suggests they have technology decades ahead of anything we've developed. Their ships move without leaving energy signatures. Their soldiers appear and disappear at will. Their weapons seem to operate on principles we don't understand. Then we overwhelm them with numbers," Vexel declared. "One ship, no matter how advanced, cannot stand against the combined fleets of the galaxy. I propose we marshal every available vessel and hunt down this retribution once and for all." The plan took 3 weeks to organize. Ships from across the galaxy converged on the Sigma Draconis system, where intelligence reports suggested the human vessel had been spotted. The assembled fleet was the largest in galactic history, over 8,000 ships of every size and configuration, carrying enough firepower to reduce entire planets to asteroid fields. Admiral Veltar commanded the Kristen contingent from the bridge of his flagship. Around him, his officers worked frantically to coordinate with the other fleet elements. The communication channels buzzed with constant traffic as commanders tried to maintain formation across such a massive force. "Contact," announced the sensor. Officer suddenly, "Single vessel, bearing 27 Mark IV. Configuration matches the human ship Retribution." On the main screen, the human battleship appeared like a dark metal predator. It made no attempt to flee or hide, simply hanging motionless in space, as if waiting for them. Compared to the massive fleet surrounding it, the Retribution looked impossibly small and vulnerable. All ships, Dexel broadcast from the fleet. Command vessel, prepare to engage. Show these humans what happens when they threaten the established order of the galaxy. But as the fleet moved into attack formation, something unexpected happened. The retribution began to change. Sections of its hull that had appeared to be battle damaged suddenly unfolded like metal flowers, revealing weapon systems that had been hidden beneath false plating. The ship's energy signature, already massive, suddenly doubled, then tripled, then climbed beyond their instrument's ability to measure. "Sir," whispered Veltar's tactical officer, "I'm reading energy levels that should be impossible. No ship that size should be able to generate that much power without tearing itself apart." The human ship's first attack wasn't aimed at any of the assembled vessels. Instead, beams of coherent energy lanced out to strike empty space around the fleet. Where the beams hit nothing, space itself seemed to twist and bend, creating barriers of distorted reality that cut the galactic fleet into isolated groups. "What is that?" demanded Admiral Krex over the communication network. "Some kind of shield technology." Major Kang Sujin's voice came through the speakers, calm and professional. "You brought 8,000 ships to fight one. That seems like poor odds, for you." The battle that followed lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, 2/3 of the galactic fleet was either destroyed or disabled. The survivors found themselves trapped in twisted space, unable to move or communicate effectively. Only the flagship vessels remained fully operational, and even they had suffered significant damage. The Retribution sat unchanged in the center of the battlefield, its weapons already powering down. "This is Captain Kim Ji-ho," came the familiar voice over all communication channels. "We have 47 more locations to visit. Anyone who interferes will be treated as hostile. Anyone who helps will be ignored. Anyone who harms our people will not survive the experience." The transmission ended, and the human ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind a shattered fleet and the dawning realization that the galaxy had made a terrible mistake. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Sigma Draconis, and the galaxy looked very different. The Great Council Chamber, that had once buzzed with the confident voices of galactic powers, now sat half-empty. Many species had fled to the far rim. Systems, hoping distance would protect them from humanity's judgment. Those who remained spoke in whispers and jumped at every shadow. Captain Kim Ji-ho stood once again before the assembled representatives, but this time his image filled every screen with quiet authority. Behind him, the bridge of the Retribution hummed with activity as his crew monitored communication networks across dozens of star systems. The ship had become more than a vessel. It had become a symbol that children whispered about in dark corners, and adults feared to name aloud. "We have completed our mission," Kim announced, his voice carrying the same calm certainty it had held from the beginning. "Every human taken from the UES New Horizon has been recovered. Every facility that held our people has been visited. Every overseer who caused them harm has been held accountable." Admiral Viltar, one of the few original council members still present, shifted uncomfortably in his crystalline form. "Captain, surely now that your people have been returned, we can discuss normalizing relations. The galaxy has learned from this experience." Kim's dark eyes fixed on the Admiral with an intensity that made the crystal being's light dim visibly. Have you really learned?" Around the chamber, the remaining representatives exchanged nervous glances. They all knew what the human captain was referring to. The rescue operations had revealed far more than just human slaves. In facility after facility, the human soldiers had found evidence of systematic abuse affecting dozens of species. The galaxy's economy, they had discovered, was built on a foundation of suffering that went far beyond what they had done to humanity. Commander Han Nari Kim said without turning around, "Please share what we found at the mining complex on Kepler 7. Han's voice came through the speakers with clinical precision. In addition to the 43 humans held there, We discovered 112 Deltan children working in conditions that violated 17 different galactic safety codes. The youngest was estimated to be 6 standard years old. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Major Kang Sujin, Kim continued. Report on the agricultural facility at New Eden. Human slaves were only 30% of the workforce, Kong's voice replied. The majority were vegan refugees who had been sold into indentured servitude after their home world was destroyed. Contract terms suggested they would never earn their freedom. Kim let the words hang in the air for a long moment before speaking. Again, we came here to rescue our own people. What we found was a galaxy that had made cruelty into commerce, a civilization that measured success by how efficiently it could break the spirit of thinking beings. Representative Crix leaned forward on her platform, her trading guild insignia catching the light. Captain, these are complex economic systems that have developed over thousands of years. They cannot be changed overnight without causing massive disruption too. They will be changed, Kim interrupted, his voice cutting through her explanation like a blade through paper. Starting now. The screens around the chamber flickered and displayed new images. Space stations under construction, ships moving through hyperspace, facilities being built on previously empty worlds. The scope of human activity was staggering. We are establishing monitoring stations throughout the galaxy, Kim explained. Commander Han will oversee a network of observers who will watch for the kind of systematic abuse we discovered during our search. The slave markets will close. The labor camps will empty. The practice of treating sentient beings as property will end. You cannot enforce your will across the entire galaxy, protested Ambassador Thexel from his new, smaller vessel. You have one ship, a few thousand people at most. The galaxy contains trillions of beings across millions of systems. For the first time in the entire conversation, Kim smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. One ship, he repeated thoughtfully. Yes, that's what you keep saying. Major Kang, how many vessels are currently operational in our fleet? Classified information, sir, came the prompt reply. Commander Han, how many monitoring stations are we capable of maintaining simultaneously? Classified information, sir. Lieutenant Commander Park, how many rescue teams are we prepared to deploy at any given moment? Classified information, sir. Kim's smile widened slightly as he looked directly into the camera. The retribution is what you have seen. It is not necessarily all that we have built. The representatives in the chamber stared at their screens with growing horror as the implications sank in. Earth had been dismissed as a primitive world with limited technology. But if they could build one ship like the Retribution, what else might they have constructed in the years since their people had been taken? The new rules are simple, Kim continued. Any species, any organization, any individual who profits from the suffering of thinking beings will find themselves visited by human ships. We will not conquer your worlds or overthrow your governments. We will simply remove the source of the problem. He paused, letting his words echo through the chamber. We are not your rulers. We are not your saviors. We are your reminder that some things should never be tolerated by civilized beings. The galaxy spent centuries learning to prey on the weak. Now it will learn what happens when the weak have protectors. The transmission ended abruptly. The screens went dark, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Outside the station's windows, space looked the same as it always had. But everyone present understood that something fundamental had changed forever. In the darkness between the stars, humanity was watching.